Join me in the audio garden to cultivate our collective wisdom, nurture creativity, and spread love. My name is Martha Senator. Welcome to Listen and Be Heard. How many of you writers have several unpublished manuscripts? Because that's me. And guess what? Some of my manuscripts, they got only a single rejection. And then that was it for me. I tossed it, moved on to the next project. How many of you are like that? So I've discovered one good thing as I'm once again trying to tackle the almighty query letter, is that a writing group of one kind or another is a great thing for moral support. Today we're going to hear from the people's poet, once again, Tony Robles, in conversation with Jen Soriano, who is the author of a new book of essays called Nervous, Essays on Heritage and Healing, one of Glamour Magazine's 15 best nonfiction books of 2023, Time Magazine's 10 new books you should read, Atlantic's 6 books that might change how you think about mental illness, Amazon editor's pick for best history and #1 new release in Asian literature. And it's here in the Listen and Be Heard audio garden. Not it. She's here. And we get to take a little break from our own thoughts and listen in with Tony and Jen as she leads us along a healing path and explains how nature helps us carry our pain. I also have another banned book in the basket and some very musical poetry. So please wander with me and enjoy all the sounds while I tend to my friends and toss ideas around in my head about my newest unpublished novel. Now a couple months finished, and this is the hard part. My first impulse is to rush into another story, and I even started working on it. But as much as I enjoy storytelling, that's how badly I would also like to get my books published. And I made a promise to me to get over myself with the whole rejection thing. I've always taken it hard, like I'm being rejected by my mama and no one loves me. So objectively, I know that if I want to have a book published, that's a business. And they say that getting a novel published takes both work and luck, and work other than the work you did on the book that you wrote, you know? So I'm going to have to tack on some savvy along with that work and luck. But that perfect query letter that you have to get someone to read to get them to read your novel, like, I don't even mind that every syllable of it counts, because I like that kind of thing as a poet, you know, but understanding what counts to someone in the book business, that's the tough nut for me to crack. So what I perceive my problem to be is that, maybe it's all in my head. But I had a couple books published back in the 90s, and neither of them was like that impressive with sales. And so I feel like that works against me. And then I cross boundaries all the time, and it makes it hard for me to describe myself without being pigeonholed, you know? So anyway, it's probably true that the most published writers, maybe they've also gotten the most rejections. And in my case, it's been all rejections so far. Does that mean one day I'll be one of the most published writers? At least it's been like that for the past couple of decades. But if I'm honest, I really didn't submit enough to be able to say that I've been roundly rejected. So I'm realizing that this may or may not be true for some of you writers. But how I've perceived, like my perception about how I'm perceived, it might be a little off, as well as my idea about what my book is or isn't. So as much as this is about writing a query letter that will represent your book, my book, I'm not going to try to tell you how to write a query letter. I point you to Jane Friedman for that and other experts on the subject. But what I'm trying out for now is the power of a sympathetic group of writers who are interested in what I'm writing. And that's why I'm not even going to point you to any particular writers' groups either, because it's a very personal choice. So toward the end of the hour, I'll tell you a little bit about my recent writing workshop experiences, which has opened my mind to another approach to writing the dreaded query letter. But look, there's Tony over there on the bench by the pond. And here comes Jen. So let's listen in.
Why must you torture me so? Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Tony Robles, and this is Listen and Be Heard Radio. The subject of pain is one that we have all kind of breached at one point or another. When I think of pain, I think of that song that Johnny Cash did a few years ago before he died. It was a song called Hurt that was written by, I think it was 9 Inch Nails. And the lyrics have always stayed with me because I found that they were very poignant and very deep. And they are as follows. I hurt myself today to see if I still feel. I focus on the pain, the only thing that's real. Jen Soriano is a writer who has written a wonderful new book on the subject of pain and how it applies to our lives, and it's all in all of its complexities. Nervous is the name of the book, and Nervous is a collection of essays on heritage and healing. And I'm just going to read from her bio. Jen Soriano is a writer and movement builder who has long worked at the intersection of grassroots organizing, narrative strategy, and art-driven social change. She has won the Penelope C. Niven Prize for Creative Nonfiction, the Fugue Prose Prize, and fellowships from Hugo House, Vermont Studio Center, Artist Trust, and Jack Jones Literary Arts. She is also an independent scholar and performer and author of the chapbook called Making the Tongue Dry. Warm welcome to you, Jen Soriano, the author of Nervous. Thank you for being on our program.
Thanks for having me on, Tony. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I wanted to start by asking, this is a book of essays on the subject of pain and trauma and all of the different layers of complexity that goes into that and how you've dealt with it. Were you initially drawn to making it an essay collection? How did that evolve?
So I had actually initially written a memoir, and a memoir that was not in essays, a memoir that was in chapters, and was what, a lot of people think of when they think of memoirs, so a more conventional narrative with beginning, middle, end. And I started getting feedback after my first draft that people thought it might work better as essays. And I was really relieved to hear that, because I think I'm actually a better essay writer than I am a conventional narrative writer. And part of that is just the way that I think. I think in fragments and kind of like flashes, as opposed to just kind of these straight stories. But then also the other piece of it is that the book tells personal stories that are about myself, but also about my parents and about my grandparents, right? So it's this multi-generational kind of memoir. And there's a lot that I didn't know about my parents' story and also about my grandparents' story. And part of that is because of the sort of learned silence that I talk about breaking in the book. And, the other part of it is that it's unfortunately really common for cultures like Filipino culture and other cultures that have been subjected to long-standing oppression, that our histories have been erased.
There was a part in the book that I was really drawn to. It was you were in a surgical situation with your father. Now, he was a neurosurgeon, is that correct?
That's right.
And you were there as an observer, observing your father in his work. Can you talk about the relationship you have with pain and the relationship that you had or have with your late father? Because they seem to be interconnected in a multitude of ways.
Thanks for that question. First, I'll say that quote that you read in the beginning of the program is a great quote, because I've come to a place in terms of understanding my relationship with the pain where I actually feel grateful for it. And the reason that I do is because I now realize that my pain was a symptom of my body telling me that it was still alive and could feel. Right. And that is a good sign. You're alive. You're still alive. So my relationship to pain has been very much from a survivor mentality. So I think that I inherited some of that survivor relationship to pain directly from my father, as well as my mother, as well as my ancestors, as so many of our ancestors have had to go through so much just to survive, to make sure that we could even be here today. What I realized through this journey of writing the book is that there can be, and in my case, there was, pretty deep psychological and emotional wounds that needed to be healed, right? And that's what the pain was directing my attention to.
Has pain been a collaborator, for better or worse, in your journey as an artist? And if so, how do you collaborate with it towards healing?
God, what a great question. I've never heard anybody ask it that way. I think that before writing the book, I might have said that pain was a dysfunctional collaborator. With 8 years of writing the book, which coincided with 8 years of different types of healing therapies and community work and collective and self-care, has led me to look at it differently, which is that I think pain has been the collaborator, or I should say, I'm going to put my own agency into it. I think I have turned pain into the collaborator that I needed to be able to share some of the larger lessons that I've learned in the process of healing with others.
You also mentioned in the book the approaches of, I guess, clinicians as being, very clinical and impersonal. And you felt in large measure that what you were going through was kind of downplayed or diminished. But also, you say that there can be a different way of looking at pain and people that are suffering with it, looking at things from a metaphorical standpoint as opposed to something rigid and like a boilerplate type approach. I thought that was really interesting. Can you speak on that?
Yeah. So I think it's a couple things. What if we looked at pain not as a sign of weakness, which I think is pretty much the dominant way that we look at pain in our society, and that's very gendered as well, right? That to show any signs of pain is to show that you're not strong enough to tough it out. So what if we changed that way of looking at pain and instead looked at it in the way that it actually biologically exists, which is as a sign that something is needed, something needs to change. And that in that way, I think I did want to kind of cast pain as an indicator of what it might be wrong, not just not with ourselves, right? Sort of not the individual disease model, but what might be wrong in our societies that we need to change in order to stop the pain from the outside in and not just from the inside out, and not just to numb it. right, with a pill. And the other thing then is around the other metaphors, right? So in the book, I share these metaphors through which I've started to view both pain and trauma, and particularly transgenerational trauma. And the primary metaphor is thinking about the nervous system as a system of waterways, right? So like the watersheds that are all around us, like rivers connected to lakes, connected to mountain streams, connected to oceans and bays.
Yeah.
And that was one of the main metaphors that helped me in my healing process. There's a trauma recovery framework that was developed by Judith Herman, in which one of the steps of trauma recovery is retelling your narrative. And so for me, one of the key parts of reshaping my narrative around pain was being able to view it through the point of view of something that was fluid, like a system of waterways, as opposed to something that was like rigid, which is how people used to think about the nervous system, like a system of railroads where nothing was going to change. You're just either working or you're broken, right? But with the metaphor of waterways, then all of a sudden, I had a way to think about my pain as something that wasn't static and wasn't set in stone, but that was responsive to my environment, right? Like the way that a river might get polluted because of, factories dumping waste into the water. But then that can also be reclaimed. That water can be reclaimed through changes in our environment. And, that's the basis of the whole neuroscientific principle of plasticity, which is relatively new. And that's the fact now. Before it was a theory. Now it's a fact that, our nervous systems can change, and they can actually change fairly rapidly through, not such huge interventions. Like you don't have to pay for expensive pills. You don't have to have expensive surgery. It changes through practice, and it changes through relationships with others and relationships with our environment.
It's very beautiful and really telling, the metaphor of the waterways and the watersheds and how these things are fluid, and how metaphorically you're illustrating the interconnectedness of things, that things aren't just, sitting in isolation. The other thing that really touched me about your book too is that, you wrote that our bodies are archives of not just our lived experiences, but of our ancestors as well. And then you wrote of your Lola Simeona, in your book, and the trauma of World War II that she experienced firsthand, which is, another kind of pain, having lost her husband. And can you maybe share a little bit about your relationship with her, and maybe how it helped you deal with some of the pain?
Absolutely. These are great questions. So my Lola Simeona was the only grandparent that I ever knew. And I feel really lucky that I got to know her. She lived a pretty long life. She lived until she was 88. And so she didn't die until I was already an adult. I was, already, I think 19 or 20 when she passed away. And so I always felt really close to her. Frankly, I felt closer to her than I did to my own mother. And, I think it's just like any kind of human relationship thing, sometimes it just clicks. And we just clicked. I clicked with my Lola. Even though, to some people, she was kind of a scary person. She was just, she was a no nonsense, a self-made woman, like never made it past the second grade, but she took care of business, and she raised, a family of 4, pretty much all by herself. So she was always an example of strength to me, strength in my matrilineal lineage. So, she, her example and her story, as well as the stories that she shared with me about my grandfather, her first husband, have been a major source of resilience for me, and have been, I think, both an explanation for some of the pain that I carry, because I write in the book about how I start to discover that, this pain that I carry in my body has often felt bigger than myself. And I start to understand that I think some of it was my grandmother's pain, her grief from losing my grandfather, her grief from, probably a lot of things that I don't know about her story, growing up as a poor self-made woman who had to raise her own brothers as well.
Well, I also wanted to talk to you about your trip to the Cordilleras as it relates to, just your evolution with pain and how you've dealt with it, because there's that fear in that region that there's government that is going to come in, take over the river. They want to dam up the river. Can you just talk about the influence that's had, and then how you're dealing with pain at the present time?
Yes. So one of the themes of interconnectedness, you had mentioned, talking about how the metaphor of waterways is really one of interconnectedness. Mm-hmm. And that's absolutely 100% right on. And so one of the dimensions of interconnectedness that I was hoping to explore in that particular essay was interconnectedness, not just between people and bodies and human beings, but between us and nature and our ecosystems, and also, frankly, the spirit world, right? That particularly many indigenous communities, such as those in the Cordilleras, see as inseparable from nature and from themselves. And for me, when I went on that trip, I think it was really the first time that I got to actually physically experience that sense of interconnectedness. And at first I was like, whoa, that feels bizarre and strange. And I don't know about, all of this. This is too much togetherness for me. But by the end of the trip, seeing and feeling that people would lay down their lives to keep the Chico River free. And the reason that they would do that is because they don't just believe, they know that river is inseparable from their bodies and from themselves and from their being and way of life. It made me feel, number one, that my pain didn't have to just be contained in my own body, that it's something that actually nature helps me carry. And that kind of conversely, pain has a purpose, not just, when we're, maybe about to burn ourselves because there's, we're too close to the stove. But if we are connected to nature and nature is being exploited by multinational corporations, by governments, that maybe the pain has a purpose because of the pain that the land and the water is having to go through at the hands of these exploitative forces. So again, both kind of somatic experience and an understanding that helped me realize that there can be a different way of relating to both nature and pain. And then on an individual level, honestly, it's been one of the most healing things to realize, actually, if I just go spend time in or around water as much as possible, it helps relieve my pain. It's, it doesn't just make me feel more peaceful. Wow. It can actually literally reset my nervous system in ways that helps relieve my pain. But then on a larger societal level, that essay really asked the question of, what if the Cordillera people didn't have to fight so hard to maintain self-determination over their land, water, and resources? And more so than that, what if the Cordillera people and indigenous people across the world were actually, given land back to steward so that our world could be reorganized back into that way of being, of interdependence and interconnectedness that had been severed violently by Western imperialism. Again, this is Jen Soriano, the author of Nervous Essays, wonderful essays on heritage and healing. Jen, thank you so much for being on Listen and Be Heard.
for people that want to know more about your book and find out what it is, what's going on, things that you're doing, they want to pick up the book. How can they do that? Best way they could do that.
The best thing to do is ask your local bookstore if they have it, and if they don't, if they can order a copy for you or stock it, because that supports your independent bookstores and also supports authors in getting on the radars of independent bookstores. But otherwise, you can also go to my website, which is jensoriano.net, and there's a way to order the book online there, and you could also connect with me on Instagram or TikTok at Jen Soriano Writes.
Once again, Jen, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Best of luck with this book. I know that this book is going to get out and a lot more people are going to read it. It's going to be very, very helpful for folks that are dealing with pain, chronic pain, spiritual pain, pain of all types. Again, thank you so much. And again, this is Listen and Be Heard Radio. My name is Tony Robles, and we're going to toss it back to Martha in the studio.
The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison.
Once it's heard, it can't be unheard. Once it's published, it's not going to be unpublished. Once you read the poem, you can't unread it. No matter how an individual may try to push it to the side, forget about it, it's still in there. And it's the words, the meaning, the feelings behind it are taking root in their psyche, and they can't get rid of it.
This book is gay by Juno Dawson.
Clearly, banning books is not the answer to anything. I do feel that people are banning books are a very small percentage in the country. And often I think they're doing it for attention as opposed to actually being concerned about what the book says or does.
Adults do not talk to us. They give us directions. They issue orders without providing information. When we trip and fall down, they glance at us. If we cut or bruise ourselves, they ask us, are we crazy? When we catch colds, they shake their heads in disgust at our lack of consideration. How, they ask us, do you expect anybody to get anything done?
That was the voice of Toni Morrison, reading from her book, The Bluest Eye. Of course, she wrote many, many books, many classic books. But The Bluest Eye has the distinction of being the most banned book in Texas and one of the most banned books in America. And I was thinking about that book, how it's about bullying on many levels, you know, and what a bully move it is to ban books. Like, you know, you and I, well, I won't assume about you, but I have different ways of getting my hands on books. And we've played quotes of people on this show who say, oh, you know, if you ban the book, I'm going to buy it. But if you look at it as a bully move, you see that, you know, the children who are victims of abuse, like the ones in the book, they're the ones who are going to have the least access to that book because the bullies are essentially keeping it from them in the most likely places that they might have access to it. So for some of us, it's hard to read about incest. But for a victim of incest, a compassionate book might actually save their life. What do you think about this whole banning books thing? This is Listen and Be Heard Radio, WLBH.org. Welcome to the Audio Garden. Let's cultivate our collective wisdom, nurture creativity, and spread love. The wind is blowing the wind chimes kind of hard. Coming up, I'm going to play some inspirational words written by Dr. Clarissa Pinkola Estes and read by Katie Kremitzos. And we're going to hear some spoken word from Bluey Incognito. And it's not spoken word, but it's definitely poetry. Horace Silver. And some other treats coming up.
It can be very scary to shine your light, to be unapologetically you, loud and proud in this world. But writer Clarissa Pinkola Estes reminds us that one of the most calming and powerful actions you can do to intervene in a stormy world is to stand up and show your soul. Struggling souls catch light from other souls who are fully lit and willing to show it.
I've had a little talk with my stomach, and I've decided to treat him right. We've made a mutual agreement, and I think at last we both seen the light. The proper food and drink I shall give him, that he may do his job successfully and render every organ of his body free from lack of strength and energy. I've had a little talk with my lungs, and I've decided to treat them right. We've made a mutual agreement, and I think at last we've both seen the light. Fresh air and exercise I shall give them, that they may do their job successfully and render to this dissipated body channels to a new vitality. successfully and render to the motor of this body fuel of life that spans the outer So have a little talk with your organs, and you will find that they treat you right. Just make a mutual agreement that you never more shall cuss, fuss, or fight till you have gone into contract, and you may do the job successfully and bring about the union of this body, and it soon may know totality.
When you see danger facing you, little boy, don't get scared. When you see danger facing you, little boy, don't you get scared. When you see danger facing you, little fellow, let me tell you what I want you to do. I want you to go right along. Go on, give a little, take a little till you get that freak. And don't be a knucklehead and make the same mistake. Life is really funny every way. Gotta ha 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 every day. Never be afraid. Now I know you've never read, but remember what I said. Anyone so tender that would easily surrender his soul. Well, I'm oh so sorry for him, little fella, but he's better off dead. So when your knees get knocking a hole in your stocking, you'd better call your all. And if it's not around, you better make a little call on sweet Georgie Brown and find a place to fall when the sun goes down, just in case you let your troubles get you down. You should be a scatterbrain, singing in the rain, never feel the pain, didn't mean a thing, just think of all the pleasures that will bring. Understand, be a man, yes you can. If you want the Lord to spare you, don't let nothing wear you, dare you, don't let nothing scare you. When you see danger facing you, little boy, don't get scared. When you see danger facing you, little boy, don't you get scared. When you see danger facing you, little fellow, don't be yellow and blue.
Who am I to say who's wrong, who's right? Got to have peace and love. Does anybody know? Can anybody say? Does anybody know? Can anybody say? Saints and sinners, we're all living our lives in the same place. Who am I to say who's wrong and who is right? Every woman, every man, every child got a love of their own. Then it's alright. But some ain't, and that ain't right, no. Saints and sinners, we're all living our lives in the same place. Roy says everybody got to love what they do when they do it in the sunshine, sunshine. sunshine. D'Angelo reminds us all that from love we came, and it should be, always be this way. Jill Scott's right, we can't keep our freedom on the shelf, 'cause life is golden, golden, golden. Bellwether spoke about the pain 'cause he knows in life there's sometimes sorrow, but there's always tomorrow. Have you got somebody to lean on? Curtis Mayfield says, move on up. Mahalia Jackson said, move on up a little higher, higher, higher. Joni Mitchell knows that life can be just an illusion, and we sometimes don't know life at all. So do as Ben Akri says, grow wherever life puts you down. Pharaoh Saunders spoke the truth when he said, we got to have freedom, freedom. Got to have peace and love. Got to have some peace and love. Got to have peace and love. Got to have some peace and love. Got to have peace and love. Gotta have some peace and love. Gotta have some peace and love. Gotta have peace and love. JD 73 and me, Bluey, brothers, we agree. Got to have peace and love. Got to have some peace and love. Got to have peace and love. Got to have some peace and love. Got to have peace and love. Got to have some peace and love. Got to have peace and love. Got to have some peace and love. Got to have peace and love. Got to have some peace and love.
Weighing heavy on my mind, trying to find that word to define how I feel. Cause every time I recline, something goes down to remind me the dream ain't real. And it's jolting to me to realize all the lies, it's insulting to me. But that's the burdens of the young, black and gifted, trying to stay lifted in the world that keeps us stinted. Just cause we pigmented, they say go be exceptional and professional, but them khakis can't fix what is institutional. So we say f*** it, cause we ain't got no time for no summit. They trying to wipe us out cause they don't want no real republic. And when we broach the subject, they try to deflect, drag a name through the mud, they ain't got no respect. And yet, you want me to respect authority? It don't make you right just cause you majority. Y'all be quoting King while you pushing a button to drop some bombs on some babies like you ain't doing nothing. That's why you ain't got no jurisdiction with me. Can't handcuff knowledge, so Miss Bree stay free. I went through college in the hood I be, spreading love to my brothers and my sisters I keep. Like, stay strong, boo, and know that I love you. Hug yourself and nobody else do. Yeah, I know they tryna break you down. They wanna steal your life and then take your crown. But stay strong, boo, and know that I love you. Hug yourself and nobody else do. Yeah, I know they tryna break you down. They wanna steal your life and then take your crown.
We still on a mission, I'm still in the kitchen. They wanna take my present cause I'm young, black and gifted. Talking down on me cause I came to get them lifted. Interrogating cause I fit the description. Keep on thinking that we all dumb, down and ignorant. Like it ain't no kings and queens in our lineage. They just wanna take my experience. They lack understanding of the infinite. But thank God for protocol. So any man enslave another man will surely fall. And that's the law of the universe. See, we were more than just some mere serfs. They still arguing about who came first. Like they ain't never wore the same shirt. twice. The chicken or the egg. See, evil cares not whose damn blood it sheds.
Stay strong, boo, and know that I love you. Hug yourself and nobody else do.
Yeah, I know they tryna break you down. They wanna steal your life and then take your crown, but
stay strong, boo, and know that I love you. Hug yourself and nobody else do.
yeah, I know they tryna break you down. They wanna steal your life and then take your crown.
Brown as mahogany, dreaming what he wanna be, hoping that he gonna be surviving all this gunnery. So much of his time goes to dodging bullets, and half of the time it was a cop that pulled it. It's real, it's hard to know your country never loved you. Living like occupied people in the Gulf do. Black bodies used up and tossed aside. And when emancipation came, then they broke out the stripes. Now they tryna lock us up and knock us out for life. And they be tryna block us every time we demand rights. Cause America be frontin' as the land of the free, while it's locking up reporters and suppressing our speech. But we gon' keep on speaking. We standing on the freedom side, the light we're beaming. We'll shine the light on all the lies and we ain't leaving. Till every child can sleep at night and wake up in the dawn feeling strong in her human rights, human rights, human rights, human rights. Stay strong, stay strong, stay strong. Ooh, stay strong, stay strong, stay strong. And you know you must. You've got to stay strong. You've got to fight on. You've got to stay strong.
Hey there. I hope you've been enjoying this spoken word set here in the audio garden. My name is Martha Senator, and this is the Listen and Be Heard hour for writers and readers. I'm trying to get to a little more comfortable spot to talk to you all here at the end of our little time together. You might remember Bree Newsome from June 27th, 2015, when she was arrested for removing the Confederate flag from the South Carolina State House grounds in the aftermath of the Charleston church shooting. And a couple weeks later, that flag was removed. That was a love song to freedom fighters by Bree Newsome, American activist, filmmaker, and speaker from Charlotte, North Carolina. And before that, you heard Saints and Sinners by Bluey of Incognito from his solo album Life Between the Notes, released on Shinachie Records. And he's one of the, new jazz groove artists going back to 1979. And he's partnered with Giles Peterson of World FM fame. And you can find out more from DJ Jeannie Hopper's notes that I'll post for this second episode of season 2 of Listen and Be Heard. You also heard I've Had a Little Talk by Horace Silver, who was one of the founding members of the Jazz Messengers. And his, 36 studio albums, 3 live albums, 7 compilations, most of them on Blue Note. He's like one of the greatest, one of my favorites. And that's actually one of my favorite songs as well. And then also, I was speaking to a group of people today and was a little, not today, last weekend, and they didn't know what vocalese was. And so I kind of felt like I have to speak up for vocalese in the, in the jazz sense of it, because I know there's like a whole classical music sense of it too. But that was King Pleasure, and he specialized in writing lyrics to jazz musicians' solos. And that was one of my favorites too, Little Boy. And so that is bringing us close to the end of this show. But I started out talking about trying to write a query letter that would work to get somebody's attention in the book publishing world so that they would read my book, and then once they read my book that they would want to publish it. And so I was saying to you, that I need to work on my perception of myself and my book and how to present it in, a business-like way, which is a different type of writing from writing a novel. So I'm trying to, get with it. And one of the ways I'm trying to get to writing that perfect query letter is actually through community. I've joined 2 different writing groups. One I've been part of for a little while, and we just meet daily on our computers. And sometimes we don't even talk, but the woman who started it, who you've heard actually on this show before, Nilsa Rivera, we check in with each other. She sets a timer, and we write for a couple hours, or, we state our intentions. And we also talk to each other about what's going on. And so it's a supportive environment for talking about sort of the business side of what you're trying to do with your writing. And I've found that to be really important because, as I was saying, I take rejection really hard. But I really shouldn't. It's just part of what happens. And just because something gets rejected doesn't necessarily mean it's not good. It's just not a fit, or they might not even just be publishing anything at the time. So you have to not be able to take things personally. And sometimes a supportive group can really help you do that. And the other group that I am part of, or, for a limited time, it's a writing workshop that Leslie Ann Brown is the leader of for counter storytelling. But what I found is that I had the opportunity to read a few pages of my novel, which, like I said, is not always the easiest thing to do to get people to even pay attention and, want to pick it up and get interested in it. So to meet a supportive group of women who I trust, and once they listen to it, to talk about how they felt about it, which helped me think differently about how I might describe the story. So, like, one woman described me as a female William Burroughs, and I have to admit, I've never read much of William Burroughs, so maybe now I have to go read a little more to see what she's talking about. Someone else told me it was lyrical, and it made people laugh, which I'm not sure I emphasized either. So all of that gave me food for thought, so that the next time I'm face to face with, this blank page that's supposed to be a query letter, that I actually want to hit a send button on, I'm going to kind of think and meditate about how people who, want to help me and are interested in what I'm doing, how they thought about what I'm writing. And so that's my thing for this week, folks, about my journey to getting published. And if you would like to share something about your journey, please do. Send me an email, or even just record something on your memo app on your phone and send it to editor@listenandbeheard.net and become a part of the conversation on this show. I want to thank Davian Dial, as always, for giving us the opportunity to bring Listen and Be Heard to the radio airwaves. DJ Jeannie Hopper, who is my co-producer for this show. Tony Robles, the people's poet, who gave us that very interesting interview with Jen Soriano. I'm going to get her book and read it now as well. And also, we have someone new, Jeremiah Cothran. I want to thank him for helping with the editing. And of course, Jay Rodriguez Sierra for the music and background loops that he provides for this show. You can check him out at jrodriguezsierra.com. Jen Soriano is at jensoriano.com. And we are at listenandbeheard.net and WLBH.org. My name is Martha Senator, and I really want to thank you for joining me here in the audio garden, for listening, and for giving me the opportunity to be heard. Next week, a live show with Laura Langnick and Meredith Lee. We'll be talking about alternatives to capitalism.
Living it, giving it, having it, taking it, moving it, shaking it, creating it, loving it, living it.